Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. I want to welcome everybody to our first virtual artist talk from Bridge the Ballot virtual exhibit and discussion. We had a wonderful discussion last week, Friday night, with all the artists, and tonight we're going to be focusing on Robin, Irene, and Aran. Thumbs up, did I say it right? You know, I have a feeling the next three Friday nights when we do these talks, and we've got two more to happen, there's going to be some new news story and some new change events. And I think it's been a slow news day the last 24 hours. What do you think? So I think it really, when I first think about why this exhibit and how this came to play, and this idea at the beginning of the year, and how this each week keeps on morphing and accelerating in the meaning of what bridging the ballot means and the importance of our vote. But first of all, I would like to say thank you to Bridge Storage and ArtSpace. They're always been a consistent partner. I'm going to be saying this at the beginning of each talk. And also the East Bay Express. I think today, and as every day goes by, we are realizing the importance of a free press and free expression and people being able to get answers to questions. And that really helps in having a healthy democracy. And so I thank you to the East Bay Express and to Bridge Art Storage and ArtSpace. And I hope we continue being partners many times in the future, but also that we keep supporting them and being part of the community. So thank you. So make sure to check out The Art of Inflection Point, the article that was written about the exhibit. So tonight we're going to feature 3 artists, and then next Friday night, the 9th and the 16th, we'll do the same. What else do you have to do on a Friday night? You get to come see great artists and listen to great talks, right? You could just be bored watching a rerun, but you came here tonight, so thank you. I'm the moderator and curator. I am a full-time artist for almost 20 years. I've taught at the Academy of Art University, UC Berkeley Extension, the Art Center. I've done a tour of the Bay Area. For many years, I served on the Richmond Arts and Culture Commission as chair, and also the Public Art Advisory Committee, where I did tons of policy work that nobody would really want to do unless you don't have a life like me. And recently I just took the position of managing director of the Contra Costa County Arts and Culture Commission, and I'm really excited about that. It's an interesting time to take that position when there's the pandemic occurring and many other factors that are happening in society. But I look forward to really advocating and strengthening these signature programs so that they can survive during this pandemic and economic downturn and into the future. And so I feel fortunate to be employed. Being employed is a good thing, so I will take that. And, I will continue fighting forward. And that's sort of been my new professions for, let's see, 6 weeks. I've had this job, so hopefully it will be longer than 6 weeks. So quickly, why this exhibit? I'm not going to get into too much because we discussed this last week. But I think, it really is about why this 2020 is a crucial presidential election. But we say this every time, but every day it seems like more and more, times 100, times 100, and this year already feels like about 10 years. So I think what we're trying to do is bring back the voice to Richmond artists and to local community, and really seeing what is important, the issues that are important to them. There's less than 10 artists in this exhibit. There's definitely more Richmond talented artists than this. I hope this is just a beginning where we can start highlighting and supporting and uplifting Richmond artists and beyond. So I'd like you, we're here to hear the artist, so we're going to get to the artist. You don't want to hear me anymore. Um, Look at Robin. This is a good picture of you, Robin. Look at you. um, I don't know if you'd like to share a little bit about yourself and your background and your connection to Richmond.
Yeah, sure. I know the screen capture that's on there is a mouthful. I think that's something Jenny grabbed from my UC Berkeley web profile, but I will save all of you the intense eye reading of having to read through that, and I'll just say that I'm by training a scientifically trained as a hydrogeologist and biogeochemist. I've been working with the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab since 2012, as well. Currently in my third year of my PhD at UC Berkeley in environmental science, policy, and management. Prior to that, my master's at San Jose State University in water resources engineering. Prior to that, my bachelor's in civil engineering at SF State. Prior to that, spent several years at Contra Costa College, more than I want to admit and acknowledge. When people refer to it as an academic career, it certainly feels like that, and I'm ready to retire. But my ability to navigate in these privileged academic spaces has allowed me to put front and center the idea and the concept of intersectionality with respect to our identities, with respect to race, gender, socioeconomic background, and so forth. Because one of the bigger problems in academia is that we don't see people who look like us. We don't see people who have similar experiences like us. And so that's been a challenge in itself in how I navigate. But the ability to explore nature the way I do and how I research it have led to a passion in photography. So I do a lot of work in nature, wildlife, urban ecology, photography, but I try to always replant myself, recenter myself, and stay loyal to the soil out here in Richmond. And when I say that, I mean, just sticking to the root. Like, you grow up in an environment like this or any other similar environment, I think we can all agree, like, we've been trained up on how to finesse and how to hustle a system that wasn't built for us. And so that's how I also try to apply my art form of photography. And if you're interested in the work I do, my Instagram's Shots from Richmond. My website's robindlopez.com. You're more than welcome to check that out. And that's my background.
And art runs in your family.
Apparently it does.
And how I met Robin was at a Richmond Rainbow Pride event where he was taking photos, and I cyber stalked you on the internet, Robin, and I found these images of the researcher, science, social educator, and the activist. I think you're just seeing so many times artists, when they're really connected to the community, they're multifaceted and they have all these different parts to them, where you are really the epitome of really bringing these three things. And that's one of the reasons why I respect your art practice so much, is because not only are you a researcher, you really bring that back to the issues that are really important to you and here in Richmond. So you're the trifecta.
I will say, before you jump to the next slide, really quickly, for anyone who's out there listening, that I do not compartmentalize my research from my personal life, meaning that I do not keep them separate. They do intersect. And right now, one of my projects I'm working on, trying to address this issue of what I refer to as ecological redlining, where we have ecological restoration, but that's only happening in privileged communities, and that correlates directly with wealth and demographics of certain ethnicities. And so those are the things I'm trying to work on. I currently have a grant proposal out right now with Microsoft to adapt that to visualization techniques and to influence policy. And so that visualization, again, like that's where the art resurfaces and that's where it constantly intersects. And so anyone who's tapping in, because I know there's several people who came in who have science backgrounds, I blast this to everyone. And so there's a lot you can do at the intersection of whatever your professional endeavors are in art.
Thank you, Robin. And look at this wonderful photo of Irene. There you go.
Hi. Let's see.
Who are you? Who's
Yeah,
Irene?
yeah. I am mostly a biologist. I grow plants and rear insects for a colony I rear some insect colonies for projects for biological control projects at USDA. I'm just a technician there, so I just do the grunt work, and I've been doing that for 16 years now, and I enjoy it for the most part. I have developed some allergies as a result of working with these plants, but that's another story. Um, and let's see, I love art from when I was young, and I used to play Legos with my sister, who then became a civil engineer, and I became an artist instead. So it's really interesting. And then, and I also used to watch this program on TV in Indonesia, where I'm from, and it was Patino. And he used to draw, like, you can draw animals from numbers. And so I loved art when I was young. And then we came to this country, and uh, I kind of had to focus on other goals in life, I guess. um, so I had to, I had to, like, my checklist. I had to get a job. I had to, finish my college, finish college, and get a job and all this stuff. And once I did that, then I was like, oh, okay, now I can go back to art. So then I would start taking art classes again, and then it kind of just ballooned from there. I met Cynthia Tom. She's with Asian American Women Artists Association. And then from there, like, there are other projects through that, a place of our own and Inner Eye Arts. They produce some exhibits, and I've been so fortunate to be able to um, make art for them, or for those exhibits. And let's see, I don't know.
Well, I think what's interesting about your art practice is how you definitely mention how you're connected to the Richmond-based nonprofit organizations, and that
Okay.
becomes part of your advocacy too.
Yeah. Yes. So I wanted to, when you mentioned this project, um, I wanted to reach out. Usually my art practice is really very personal based, and mostly about my family history. So this time I wanted to branch out and move beyond myself and towards the community in which I live. So I asked for permission, and I contacted 3 organizations, because at the time I didn't have that much time to get this all done before, I guess, I don't know, it was like March or something. And so I had only time to get, like, permission, and then to write up an MOU, and to, make the art itself. And so I contacted 3 organizations, and they are Urban Tilth, Richmond Trees, and Fix Our Ferals. And see, Urban Tilth, they have they have farms, and they have a CSA program, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, in fact, I know they do. And they also have plant along the greenway. They have greenway gardens, and I think they have a watershed project too, and in Albany Hill. So they're kind of all over. And then they also work with high school, Richmond high school students. So it's just really an impressive array of I don't know, just they work with the community, and um, they serve sort of the underserved population, like in the Greenway and the Iron Triangle, so that um, I
Yeah.
don't know, that there's, and then they have fruits, and people come, and then people in the neighborhood, they come and have access to fresh food and fresh fruit. So I really support them. Richmond Trees is an organization that actually grew out from just a few neighbors. It was like before Nextdoor app, right? So I think they
Yes.
were on like Yahoo groups or something, and this is before I moved to Richmond. Um, but they wanted more trees in their neighborhood, so they kind of grew out of that, just the desire to have more trees in the neighborhood. And because they were walking around, they're like, there's like hardly anything here, so.
I think for the
and
time that I've been following your art practice, you've always been so sensitive to the needs of the community, and that makes such a big difference, I think, in the work that I see.
oh, thank you.
Yeah, in your practice, and especially even your family background, that connection to the earth and the planet. And I also know that from the Right Here, Right Now exhibit, you were also included at the Naiad Art Center too, with another
Yeah,
artist.
yeah, yeah. So I was really floored, and really happy to have been able to have that opportunity. Um, so yeah, I don't know what else to say
Well,
about
I'm
that.
not surprised. Thank you, Irene. Oh, and Aaron, I'm unmuting you.
Mm-hmm.
Look at, I found this on the internet of you.
This is funny. Yeah. When I went through the slides earlier, I was like, ooh, someone was perusing the interwebs. Good ones.
Oh, if you'd like to just share your practice, because I think, or your whole background, because I think the three things that all the artists here tonight have in common is this multifaceted background that informs their practice. And if you can share your education and social justice and your amazing resume with us, I appreciate that.
Okay. I'll try. I get shy. Yeah, so my name's Iran. I'm from LA originally. I moved to the Bay in 2014. That is when I graduated from USC with a bachelor's in creative writing and an emphasis in poetry. And so I moved up here to teach. So for about 4.5, almost 5 years, I was teaching in an Oakland public school called Alliance Academy. It's a school that I really loved, and that just really set me on a particular trajectory to to grow and develop as an educator, and then also to grow and develop as an artist. As an educator, I was working with middle schoolers. I don't know if I said that already. And I was really adamant about getting my young people to see themselves as creatives and to see themselves as problem solvers, to see themselves as agents or people with agency. And somewhere along the way realized that there were a lot of ways I wasn't taking my own advice around my own art practice, and the ways that I was like really invested in my young people as storytellers or whatever kind of creative art that they were into. But it also started stirring something within me, because I went straight from college into the classroom setting. And I know we have a lot of educators on this call. And so that, that is just like a burnout central type of place. Like you give it everything, which you absolutely should, but like balance is hard, and like personal agendas are difficult as well. So anyway, I found myself really losing my artistry and then finding my artistry throughout the course of my my career in education, or in the classroom rather. And what can I say? Along the way, I've been really fortunate to find myself in some learning communities with other educators around the makerspace movement, around arts integration work, interdisciplinary learning and curriculum building. And I would say over the past 2 to 3 years, I've really been trying to find a space to be that kind of, I feel like, speaks to what Robin was saying, like really honors all of my identities in the same place, like really looking for that place where I can be an educator, and I can be a mentor to young people, and I can also be an artist. And so I recently also, Jenny, started a new job.
You too?
Yeah. So I just recently started as the host and lead teacher of a show for young people called Learning in the Making Live. And it's through the organization Maker Ed in Berkeley. Well, we're all virtual right now, but based in Berkeley. And the show is all about inviting different creative problem solvers of color to do some type of interactive project-based learning with me. And so we do like a whole, like a lesson live on the interwebs, and then also just like a banter and community building between myself and whoever the artist or scientist or whoever is on, and we do some project together. So like last week was my first official show, and we created lanterns out of materials that you can find around the house. And we talked about and learned about the Mid-Autumn Festival. And yeah, it was a really good time. So
that's pretty amazing, and it's not surprising. And I think what ties all three of you artists together tonight is this multifaceted background and that search and finding of your life purpose and practice and emerging these. And that sometimes it's easy for some folks, and sometimes it takes a lot longer. And if you're alive and you get to discover that, that is kudos. That's a good thing if you're alive and you get to have that opportunity. And I think that's one of the things that, I'm going to be biased, strengthens art practices when you have these other connections and these other interests, and that can inform and bring a different type of research and to your art practice. And so I think tonight, the questions that we're going to discuss is, what is the concept behind your artworks? What is your connection to Richmond? And some of you have already touched on that. And how does art highlight current events and address social issues? That could be like a 3-hour discussion right there. And how can artists be supported now and into the future? And this is, I want to, Robin, you're on deck for this one.
Yeah, so I'll just jump straight into it. So the concept behind my project, which is called Richmond Speaks, centered around the idea that when we are engaged in the civic process, we often are engaged because of an emotional response to whatever's going on in society. It's not normalized for communities of color specifically to get politicized and to hit the ballot. Like that's not a normal conversation at the dinner table, not unless something has come up where we again feel threatened or harmed. And so with that in mind, like it made me think too about the youth in our community who bear the residual impact of the decision or lack of decisions that we make when it concerns civic engagement and voting. And so that, hence the name of the project, Richmond Speaks, and the sign that this young man's holding, it reads, "Vote so we can be heard." And that's more or less the drive of what I'm doing for this particular art project, is to highlight young people in our community who don't have the ability to vote or didn't have the ability to vote at the time of their respective shoots, and to just kind of focus that energy on them. And these photos were intentionally made to be black and white, just to kind of give that that strange juxtaposition of the access to be able to vote on one's behalf and not to, but also to give it that that weird concept that not everything is black and white, right? So those are the emotions I was hoping to elicit from this project, and so that's what's motivating it. And this photo in particular, I love that Jenny picked it because that's right in front of the Rich City Rides bike shop. So shout out Rich City Rides. I'm always over there trying to get shots for them. Naj and Tay, they're doing great work in the community. And this is actually one of the young men who worked at the bike shop. And I love this young man to death. He's always asking questions about life in general, and sometimes he asks random questions like, "How do I tame my hair?" Because apparently him and I got the same type of hair, and so sometimes he's asking me what kind of mousse I use, and we're able to have those funny conversations, and when having these conversations with him and the other young people, again, it just recenters to the idea that they have to sit here and watch us adults play around with the privileges that we do have. And this could speak more broadly too to the issues of those who don't hold citizenship status but are adult. Our brothers and sisters who are immigrants, who will unfortunately likely never get the chance to be civically involved in that regard, to vote for what matters to them. And so that again is what drives the concept behind my artwork, is to make sure and to highlight when you're voting, vote, like Richmond's motto, pride and purpose, vote with pride and purpose, vote with intention, and make sure you're doing it with respect, not just to what you need or what you expect, but what the impact going to be in several generations. And thank you, Jenny, for cruising to the next slide. Those pens, those are recent pins I made that say "Vote with Pride and Purpose." I've been selling them. I still got some available. Actually, I got some next to me. Yeah. But yeah, so if you want some "Vote with Pride and Purpose" pins, let me know. I got them for sale. That's my shameless plug. But and I get that definitely highlights the concept behind my work, but in terms of connection, like I'm definitely rooted in Richmond, definitely rooted in the broader community, and my connection to Richmond isn't just walking through the space, but it's working to empower this space. You heard earlier me share my background about being a scientist and how I intentionally do not compartmentalize those lifestyles, but instead make sure that they intersect. And part of that is teaching for a local nonprofit called Metas at Contra Costa College, and working with 4th and 5th grade students to help them understand a sense of self and sense of identity, which coupled with the other two panelists have mentioned too. For me, that's important. And that, I think, speaks much more deeply in terms of someone's connection to Richmond, whether you've been here for your whole life or whether you've only been here for 6 months. It doesn't matter. What matters is how you're moving in the space, how you're allowing your identity to be expressed, but also what you're doing to allow other people's identity to be expressed and to be heard and to be visible, especially in these times when we're talking about civic engagement.
What I really find interesting, this is like a participatory project with the pins, and it also makes it accessible to the people to get a pin, a piece of artwork for $2, where sometimes when we look at the disconnect in the art world from high-end galleries and the cost of works and who gets to really see works, and even institutions where I haven't been to SF MoMA in a long time, but the last time I checked, I think it was $25 each to get in, and maybe it's better, more. I don't know if it's changed with the pandemic, but there's this disconnect of how can we make art accessible and really communicate to the people in the communities. And I think this project was really impressive and effective in that purpose, and pride and purpose. Irene.
Okay. This I have right here. So I'm using I guess I'll just show. It's just a gallon nursery container. And then I used let's see, an image. I learned how to jelly print recently. So I jelly printed an image from Richmond Tree's Instagram, and I wanted to show how I can't hang this up anymore. I wanted to show how we are not divorced from our environment. We exist within it, and we depend on it. And whatever we can do to aid its survival is also going to help our survival. So anyway, so yeah, Richmond Trees is just is an organization that I supported that plant trees in the community, and here we have a climate crisis going on. It's been ongoing for a long time, and they just do a small part, but and it's really easy. It's right in front of your house. It also is I think when you see it also allows them to invest in their communities, because these trees are going to be mature, in 20 years or in 30 years. And so it might not, it is for the next generation, and it's really going to benefit them. And so that's why I wanted to focus on them. And I'm just a really big fan of using found objects because I don't know, I just want to show, like, it's all accessible. You don't have to have, I don't know, a lot of money, or you can just find things around your house already. It's already there. All the art materials is there.
And I've been, cyber stalking you on Instagram.
Yeah.
So, and I've been following you, this project that you started with handwriting postcards. And I can imagine you doing this process, and it's so thoughtful, and so is your art practice. Like everything, the materials you pick, the concept behind it, everything is thoughtful. And this type of advocacy is very thoughtful too. And it just seems such a perfect fit. And if you would like to share this project that you've been doing.
Yeah, it's with Postcards to Swing State, and they send postcards to. I think they've completed their project though, but they just they send out. You ask for whatever. Like they have different states. They had Kentucky, Texas, Arizona. They have a bunch of swing states. And so you get a stack of postcards and you handwrite. They already you choose like the message. They already have the message, but you have to handwrite it, and it takes so long. Oh my god. So yeah, I didn't realize my hands. It's anyway. So I have to write 200 of these postcards to Kentucky and 200 more to Texas. I've also been text banking for, I don't know, I guess I've adopted Kentucky and Texas, but I've been text banking for Kentucky for, let's see, in December, Governor Bashar restored voting rights to ex-felons, and they had to fit like a certain criteria. They had to be, I don't know, like nonviolent. They had to have, it's not like it's just all across the board, but it's a very narrow section. And anyway, so we were, so I was text banking with, and trying to get them to vote, or trying to find get them to vote. And it was worth it. Yes, 2 days ago I found 2 days ago I helped one person whose nonviolent conviction was over 20 years ago, and so, and then this year he can vote. So he found out he can vote. I was so happy. I was like, oh, it was worth like wading through all those texts from Trump supporters like telling me off, you know. So I was happy with that. And then so I've just been doing like things like that. It's not necessarily, it's not really art related.
It reminds me of just sort of like planting that seed in that tree, and you seeing the results later, and sometimes you might not see it, but it starts planting that, and it's like a root, like it's like a metaphor when I see you and imagine you writing this, and how personal handwriting is, because I don't know how many people even do that anymore. So thank you for everything you do, Irene. Guess who's up next? Yeah, Ron.
Okay, there I go. I'm gonna leave. Okay. It's me. Okay.
You're good.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, I almost feel inclined to ask, like, what do people see when they look at this? This is probably, like, outside of family, this is the second time that I'm sharing work publicly, only the second time. So I don't know if I said this earlier, but I'm primarily a poet. And I've been getting into painting more, I don't know, as like seriously as a craft over the past 2 years. So pretty new to the medium. So I think like one concept behind my artwork is really playing with this new medium. And this is a bit of acrylic as the like base layer, and then oils on top for the imagery. I don't know, I'm big on the heart motifs, anatomical heart motifs. So you'll see that in my other piece too.
I was going to ask, what does that mean? What is that, the heart and the hand? Because these are that connection, right? It forms some kind of connection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big-hearted person. I think I was talking about this last night, actually. I think I use my art, whether it's poetry or painting, as an excuse to be vulnerable. It's a very hard thing for me to do in like my real life. I'm generally like on the receiving end of vulnerability and providing support, or like providing a listening ear and things like that. So I kind of find my art to be like this like kind of sneaky way to express what's on my heart. And so we have these 3 hearts here. I don't know. I was thinking about, this is called For You. And I was thinking a lot about giving, what it means to give your heart. And like that can be in the romantic sense, but it can definitely be in like a political revolutionary sense too. In so far as like, what are we willing to risk or expose for liberation or for love? Yeah, I've also lost some really significant people in my life. So like maybe it's a subconscious representation of that as well, just like this consistent loss of Black life. And yeah, I think like, you know, you can give someone flowers and it would be maybe like a similar imagery, right? But the flowers would be like standing up. And I don't know, just like maybe a nod to how heavy or how weighted it is to give your heart as opposed to flowers.
And
Yeah.
that, I think this is where it sort of ties into when I first met you. And I remember, I think I asked you for your resume, or you gave it. I can't remember how that happened, but when I was looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, Harvard Project Zero, Agency by Design, you're a fellow. And if you don't mind sort of sharing what that means, because I think the theme tonight is this faceted background of the artist and how that informs your practice. If you can sort of share what this project was, what you did.
Yeah, sure. So let's see. Harvard Project Zero is this like, I don't know, niche community in the Harvard School of Education. And they do a lot of work around like making a learner's thinking visible, right? So like, how do we know what we are learning? What are the ways that we can document our learning or the learning of our whoever is in our learning community, not just young people, but adults as well. And the Harvard Project Zero came to Oakland. And so you see like top right, Agency by Design Oakland. So there was this partnership between Agency by Design Oakland and Harvard Project Zero, where there was a move to bring these things, to make these things more, sorry, my partner is in the back making me laugh. Sorry, he's doing too much. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, so there was a move to make this all these thinking strategies, and more specifically the makerspace movement. I don't know if y'all are familiar with that. It's like kind of very niche language, but make the makerspace movement more equitable, right? So bringing it to Oakland and inviting teachers, educators in Oakland. And so it was a lot of classroom educators, but also educators who were librarians or educators who were coaches of other teachers. So not just classroom teachers, but a wide variety of different folks who are working with young people. And it was this fellowship that was very interactive and really placed the educator, in the student's seat. And we it was, I don't know, it was like research based. It was like, how do we bring the makerspace here to Oakland? How do we make it equitable? How do we know it's working? How do we know our students are even interested in this in the first place? And so we were just kind of like in real time research mode. So we would be tinkering and making art and doing science projects and stuff like that as an educator community, and then going back to the classroom and choosing to prototype certain things in our classroom, and then documenting that, and then bringing that back to our educator group. And I ended up doing that for 2 years. So I did it for the first year, and then I went back the second year. And through that, my really good friend and partner teacher, her name is Alia Gabra, and she's actually still at the school that we used to teach at together. We just had a whole shift in the way we were approaching our pacing. And it was almost like this program was an invitation to do the things for young people that we already knew we should be doing, making space for creativity, making space for tinkering, making space for curiosity and discovery. And so through that program, we got a grant to start a makerspace club after school. We made an entire day of the week, Wednesdays, which was a short day. We made that Art Wednesdays. So yeah, it was a really great experience. I don't know if, yeah, I know I'm just like going on and on. I don't know
But
if you have
thank
been.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that type of experience sort of ties into what our times are right now and how we can collectively as a community rebuild. And how do we rebuild to make these structures better? Going back to normal, in my opinion, is not an option. I think we need to get back. And if the old institutions are not working, let's either break them down or rebuild or start something new. And I think that experience, and that's one of the reasons why I was drawn to Irene Robbins and Irene's experience, is that artists are really at the forefront of sort of speaking that truth and implementing different disciplines in their art practices to start new structures. And so when I look at Irene's work, like how does art highlight current events and address social issues? And I'm so glad that Irene included this image on Instagram where it's something that I did not see when I first saw the image. And then to see this element on the side of this, can you explain what this is, Irene? And because this definitely seems to me address current events here in the community.
Yeah, that's the whole community. That's the community coming out to participate in Urban Health events, or they're volunteers, or they work there. So those are the community that they involve, that this organization involves. And yeah, I was going to do like jelly print. I was going to jelly print these images, but it just did not come out. So after it came out, but then I was like, oh, then people are gonna be like, who's that? And I just wanted, so I just gave up. I wanted to do justice, and so I just I actually can't. I guess you can't really see, but I sewed the images together. Oh, you can see that one. Yeah, so I sewed the images together, and then I just pasted that along the side, because the organization Urban Health is about community, and about and also about food justice and social justice and environmental justice. So it just addresses a whole array of needs for the community. And anyway, I wanted to honor that part. Like, it's not just about fruits and food and what we get out of it, but it's also about uplifting the people, and the people behind it is what makes the organization work, and what makes any community work, actually. people, right?
What I loved about that is it's sort of this community structure holding together the front of this image, right? The environment.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
how brilliant that is. It doesn't have to be overt. It's just this subtle but strong structure of the community that's bringing together, quote unquote, the harvest.
yeah.
It's brilliant.
Thanks.
So Aaron, when I go to your work again and I see Helmet Heart, I'm curious about that title and how that addresses that correlation to current events and social issues, because you were talking about the vulnerability, and in a way I was thinking when you were talking about that being somewhat of a symbolistic or abstract self-portrait in a way. And so if you can just speak to Helmet Heart and how that addresses social issues.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're spot on. I think, I was reading some short essays by Toni Morrison last night, and I was struck by one that talks about how threatened the life of artist can be, particularly a political artist. So I think, in particular, the driving question behind Helmet Heart, there was a reflection question that kind of spurred or sparked this imagery for me, and it was around how do you have this balance of vulnerability and protection?
Mm.
How can you be vulnerable and protected? And I don't really know if I have an answer for that. I don't know if you can do both at the same time, to be honest. But this was my attempt at just grappling with that question. And we are in a time where lives are constantly threatened, and harm is a response to being outspoken or mobilizing for particular rights and acknowledgments, particular retribution. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I think something, again, just from Toni Morrison, who can say everything better than I can, was this line about artists sharpening the moral imagination of the people. And so that's what I try to do. I try to spark reflection. I don't know how big I am on telling people what to do, or even like being super forthcoming about what I think or believe, but I really like sparking dialogue, sparking reflection, and the type of reflection that will hopefully lead to transformation, whether that's transformation of the self or transformation in the community. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think when I juxtapose that work, Helmet Heart and Harvest, and I go to the work of Robin, and I'd like Robin to sort of, when we speak, because it's Robin Speaks series, I'm going to say Robin Speaks series. That to me, with this work, at how your art highlights current events and addresses social issues, I'm curious about your background on that. Has your work always address social issues?
Yeah, so I would say much of my life has addressed social issues.
Yes.
The unfortunate reality is when we walk in this world as minoritized individuals, especially if you live in black and brown skin, your life is politicized from the day you were born. You're politicized every single day. You're politicized when you walk into an academic institution or professional space. You're constantly politicized. And so I would say the act of addressing that is an act of social activism.
Yeah.
And not that's part of the again that's part of the reason of this project is to show young people that you can be an activist like that. That unfortunately has to be a part of our life. And I say unfortunately because it's the year 2020 and we're still fighting for basic things of equity and access across the board. Whether it concerns gender, racial identity, religious affiliation, and so on. Abilities or people who operate in the disabled spaces who can't even get the proper respect and dignity that they should be afforded. It's a litany of issues. And like I said, it's 2020 and we shouldn't be here still trying to bring up these issues. These are issues that unfortunately exist because of the way colonization has taken shape, not just here in the Americas, but throughout the world, and the way in which our ancestors have been abused, harmed, and then further conditioned to essentially accept what it is as is or be killed. I mean, that I know that's very morbid, but that is the reality. And so when we talk about, how does this highlight current issues, we can't talk about current issues until we reckon with the past. And I think that is a problem with our society, and we also see that in Richmond. We often hear about people who talk about the presence of the Richmond Cowboys in the police department back in the 80s. And people like to say, well, that's the past. Like, yeah, it was a moment in time in the past, but the residuals of that still exist. There are people who are still traumatized from that. There are people who were victims in those situations and whose kids witnessed that. And now that has shaped their worldview. And, and this isn't just an attack on the policing of our community, but like this spans even to what's going on with Point Melody. That has been a thing that's been happening on a historical scale, still impacts us presently. And so I can go on for days and give examples, especially when it concerns the environment and our ecosystem. But again, just, to recenter the youth in this project, that is the point of it. And like, that is how this project highlights issues of social, political conditions that they are sprung into. And again, the concept of the project that I mentioned earlier, to vote with youth and the next generation in mind. Like, we have to have that responsibility and agency to be accomplices for the youth and their voice as well. If we're not doing that, if we're not holding ourselves accountable, then we are just as bad as the person who doesn't vote. If we're voting blindly and not considering what our vote does. And this is the phrase like I borrow from my friend Najari over at Rich City Rides. With what we do now, we need to consider what is the consequences 10 generations from now.
Yep.
And and that's something that is very prevalent and common in cultures of in communities of color and Black and brown cultures. We constantly think about that, and this is something that's also prevalent in Asian community cultures. We think about the things we do, how does it impact the next several generations? But here in the United States, again, with the issue of colonization and how people in a society had been conditioned to think very differently with a hyper capitalistic mindset. We seldom have people in power who think about impact to the next several generations. They just live in the moment. They live in the now. They don't think about what happened yesterday, what's happening today, or what's going to happen tomorrow.
It's like winning at all costs without care of any type of consequences. They don't care.
Mm-hmm. I
Right.
mean, we look no further than our current leadership in the White House and the disgusting rhetoric that was thrown towards the Asian American community right here on our own soil, the rampant xenophobia. And so, that segues into, loosely segues into this question about how artists can be supported now and into the future.
Yeah.
Is when I'm bringing these issues up and the other issues that Aaron has brought up and that Irene has brought up, that we could amplify this if we're putting more support and funding into the arts. If we are supporting the artists, like, not just like myself, but the others who maybe aren't on this call, who should be having space held for them. Supporting that now or supporting them. Let me back up a bit. My mind works faster than I speak sometimes. Supporting artists now not only supports the individual, but it supports the message of activism. It supports the message of civic engagement. It supports the message of identity, responsibility, accountability, inclusion, the whole list. It makes that possible and puts us on a path to a sustained future. If we look into, historical analysis of many great points in history that are constantly reflected on, whether it be the Greek, the Roman, the Egyptian, the Mayans, Aztec, there's always this centering of art. There's always this centering of what the different groups did or what these individuals did to leave a permanent mark in this world. And if we could do that with our own artists and our own communities who do have the talent, we're setting ourselves up for a much brighter future.
Yeah, I agree. And so, art really speaks that truth. And I think good art is allergic to gaslighting. And so this is our last question. And Irene, I just wanted, as we're closing up, and if you're still on the call, we're probably going to talk for another 5-10 minutes just to give people a heads up. When I think of Irene's work, nourishment, how can artists be supported now into the future? I think of how can artists be nourished? We need that support. And I think of Irene last week at the reception mentioned that you feel uncomfortable selling your work, right? And so your work is about giving and, this part of your practice. And I'm just sort of curious from that perspective, how do you feel artists can be supported now into the future?
I've been thinking about this, and I have to be honest, I have no idea. So I'm gonna say I don't know, because I think the priorities have to be reimagined or reset or something.
Yes.
The people in power necessarily value art, so I think it goes back to to Robin's work, vote so we can be heard, and it's artists usually speak about experiences that are maybe less that have, I don't know, like the marginalized, or like the people who don't have the voices. And if you don't have the voice, you don't most likely don't have the power, right? So I don't know how artists can be supported except that like yeah. I mean, they were gonna close down the library, so I
Yes.
don't know how. So I'm not even sure, like, well, if they're gonna close down the library, how can they even focus? How can they think that art is more valuable if they can't support, I don't know,
I
basic knowledge, access to knowledge? I don't know.
bring up a great point, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to list opportunities, right, for artists, like the Richmond Neighborhood Public Mini Grant, these listings of the local arts and cultural organization grant, the East Bay Fund for Artists, where you have to keep up the pressure to keep the funds happening. And that means even applying if you feel like it's a long shot, because organizations need to know that there's a need and that they can keep on coming back and saying, look at this need, and keep on, every bit you have to fight for, right? And I think that's one of the things that supporting these type of grants and these calls and making sure they still exist now into the future is a really important element of saying that we value this. And I know that's sounding like this would be a perfect world to be able to continue having the support, but we have to, because I think artists are really sort of the framework and the backbone of the community. They really can speak to different types of perspectives, and they need to be funded. And I don't think of it as a frivolous or something that's not necessary. It's important to a healthy democracy and to really building partnerships within the community. So, here's a few opportunities, but we need to make sure they're around into the future. Aaron, if you have anything else to say, if you want to just sort of add on to how artists can be supported now into the future, if you have anything. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement. I'm definitely in agreement. I think the things I have to add, or like what comes up for me, is thinking about how there's some educational statistic that around third grade-ish is when young people stop considering themselves artists or creatives. There's a very noticeable shift that happens where people start getting, tracked for various specific things, and the muscle of creativity isn't massaged by the education system. And so I think funding arts in schools, which, I know is like what people say often, but funding arts in schools.
Just do it.
And I think really, like, as far as mindset, really pushing our own mindset that art and creativity is not limited to like a select few prodigies that can just for some reason do something really well, but just like how can we all be flexing that creativity, and it doesn't all have to look like painting or poetry or sculpture, but maybe it's cooking, or maybe it's gardening, or maybe it's like the way your community looks, different things like that. And I don't, kind of like Irene, I kind of want to say a big, I don't really know.
Right.
And I have like a thought of tension around like government funded art, and just like to what, I don't know. I don't think it's in the government's best interest to fund artists that have critical things to share, to say. I think it's in the community's best interest. And so, like, how do we gather as collectives? And I like that word you said, nourish, to nourish our artists, or to nourish our communal creativity.
Well, I just want to say thank you to Irene, Aaron, and Robin for a absolutely fascinating talk and sharing your inspirations, your background, in your art practices. We could talk for probably 5 hours, but I want to thank you for taking the time tonight. And these type of discussions, I think, start making change and start adding support. And, it's one discussion at a time. It's one action and one advocacy at a time. I think of Irene's postcards. I think of Robin's pins. I think of Aaron teaching. All those things make a difference, a collective difference into moving forward. So I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This is going to be recorded and this is going to be posted on YouTube. And thank you to all the participants and the viewers. Stay well, and I hope we don't have to wear a mask much longer. Thank you. And and stay tuned for our talk October 9th and October 16th with 3 more artists. Thank you. Be well and safe.
Thank you.